Karen Mitchell is my name, and as long as I can remember, family has been the heart of my existence. I was raised in a small town in Ohio where Sundays were always spent with cousins, uncles, and grandparents gathered around long tables filled with food. As the years passed and everyone went their separate ways, it became harder to keep that closeness alive, despite my best efforts. I was especially close to my younger sister, Rebecca, and her only son, my nephew, Ethan. From the moment he was born, I felt a bond with him that went beyond the normal aunt-nephew relationship. Perhaps it was because I had never a family of my own, or perhaps it was simply the way he looked at me with those wide, trusting eyes, like I was someone who could move mountains for him. Ethan had always been a dreamer. He would sit by the pond, even as a young child, window during thunderstorms, and imagined worlds where knights fought dragons. Or he'd draw pictures of rocket ships and swear he'd go to space one day. Life hadn't always been easy for him, though. His father left when he was very young, and Rebecca had to raise him mostly on hers alone. I stepped in whenever I could, babysitting, taking him to school, or attending soccer games to support Loudest from the bleachers. Over time, Ethan began to confide in me about things he didn't always share with his mom, his hopes, his fears, and the little wishes he carried deep in his heart. He was there one summer evening when Ethan and I sat together when we were about 12 years old, outside on my porch. The cicadas buzzed in the distance, and the smell of freshly cut grass hung in the air. He leaned against me with a thoughtful look in his eyes. "And Karen," he said quietly, "if you could grant me just one wish, would you do it?" I was caught by the question, off guard. I laughed lightly and brushed his hair back from his forehead. "Well, that varies. What is this desire of yours?" He hesitated as though afraid I could have dismissed it. But then he said, "Desire to view the ocean. I've seen pictures and movies, but I've never been there. I want to know what it feels like to listen while standing on the sand, the waves. Mom claims that we cannot afford a trip right now, but if I had one wish, that would be it." My chest tightened within my chest. To me, a trip to the ocean was a straightforward thing. But to it was a magical moment, Ethan. It was a dream he'd been holding on to. I looked at him, and without thinking twice, I said, "Then we'll carry it out. I promise." That night, I started planning. Money was tight for Rebecca, but I had been saving a little for a rainy day. I concluded that the time had come. I researched coastal towns within driving distance, looking for a place that wasn't too crowded, but still offered that breathtaking view of the ocean Ethan longed for. Eventually, I found a small beach town in North Carolina. It was affordable, family-friendly, and seemed like the perfect escape. When I disclosed Rebecca about my plan, she looked at me with her eyes full of tears. "Karen, you are not have to do this. It's a lot, and you've already done so much for us." I squeezed her palm. "Becky, he is my nephew, and children sometimes require more than just food and clothes. They need memories, something to hold on to when life gets tough. Let me do this for him." She nodded, and within a couple of weeks, Ethan and I were loading up the car with beach towels, snacks, and sufficient excitement to power the whole trip. I'll never forget the look on his face as we pulled onto the highway, the windows down, his favorite radio station blasting songs. This time, his laughter was not burdened by anything. The drive was long, but we filled it with silly games, stories, and dreams. Ethan asked 1,000 questions about the ocean, what the water would feel like, whether finding seashells was simple, and if crabs really scuttled sideways the way cartoons showed them. I answered everything I was able to, but deep down, I was just as excited to watch him discover it all for the first time. When we finally arrived at around 5 p.m., the sun hung low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The sour air surged into the vehicle as soon as I opened the door. Ethan froze on the boardwalk, his eyes wide as the roar of the waves filled his ears. He didn't move at first. He just stood there like he couldn't believe something so big and endless existed. Then, without warning, he bolted forward, kicking off his shoes and immediately heading for the sand. I followed, laughing as he let out a cry of pure joy. His small feet sank into the wet sand and he waded into the foamy water, squealing when the waves splashed his legs. I stood there, watching him, my chest tight with emotion. I was aware at the time that I had done the right thing. It wasn't simply a trip. It was a memory he would keep forever. That night, we sat by the shore under a blanket of stars. Ethan leaned against me, worn out from all excitement, and whispered, "Thank you, Aunt Karen. You made my wish come true." I kissed the top of his head. "Always, Ethan. I'll carry out any wishes you may have. Anything I can do to say yes?" What I didn't realize at the time was that this promise would carry us through much more than merely a summer vacation. That wish was only the beginning of a journey that would change our lives in ways I've never imagined expected.